Hey, Rebecca, great to see you.
Hi, sorry about that. Um,
Hi,
I still
Rebecca.
don't have it anywhere other than what you just forwarded, so love it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, participants are coming in. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dana Wenger, and I'm from the Career Enrichment Network. I am the Student and Alumni Relations Coordinator and a career coach here. And we are going to be getting started here in the next minute or so. We're going to start off by reading I'm going to read the bios of our wonderful panelists that we hear today. We're so thankful for them dedicating their time to be here with us and share their career journeys to help on your pathways. Lauren Grenice is also here. Lauren, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all here. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us, especially as the weather's clearing. I'm the Assistant Director of the Career Enrichment Network. I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A while we hear from our panelists. So please, 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 we have an expert of amazing alumni here, or expert alumni who are complete experts within their field. And we would love for you to ask questions. This is the time to do so.
Thank you, Lauren. So I'm going to start off by reading the bios. And again, we're so thankful for these opportunities. We want them to be as comfortable for our panelists to just talk about their career paths. And please put the questions in the Q&A. This is an hour that we have from their very busy schedules, very, very busy schedules. So again, we're thankful for that. So we have Rebecca Rocky, who is a 2010 liberal arts graduate in 3 different majors: economics, French and Francophone studies, and international studies. She's a deputy chief economist and global head of forecasting at Cushman & Wakefield. In her decade at the firm, her responsibilities have evolved significantly. Her focus spans economics, demographics, financial markets, and commercial real estate, both at the macro and micro levels. She manages the production of national and metro level commercial real estate forecasts across the Americas, develops predictive econometric and statistical models to enhance the firm's analytical capabilities, and contributes to numerous white papers, webinars, media requests, and industry client presentations. In her global role, she extends this expertise to other regions. She is a strategic internal and external advisor across service lines and regions, connecting research themes to actionable and tactical views on the market. She is certified by the International Institute of Forecasters, is a member of the American Economic Association, the National Association of Business Economics, and the National Economists Club. In 2014, she was part of the forecast team that won the NABE's Outlook Award Most Accurate Forecaster. In 2023, she became co-chair of NABE's Commercial Real Estate Roundtable. She previously worked as a consultant at a consultant firm engineering models to forecast agency subsidy costs and loss reserves for Fannie Mae's single-family private label MBS portfolio. Prior to that, she was a junior analyst at the Congressional Budget Office in the Financial Analysis Division. There, she contributed to numerous analyses related to federal credit programs, accounting treatments of federal credit, and the treatment of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in the federal budget. She was particularly focused on fair value estimation of federal direct lending and guaranteed credit programs, and contributed to FAD's first comprehensive estimate across more than 100 credit programs with a portfolio value of $3.1 trillion for the Congress. She is frequently cited in the media and is an advisor to the New York City Office of Management and Budget, the New York State Budget Division, and the DC Policy Center. She is also a participant in the Beige Book for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Thank you, Rebecca, for joining us today. Next, we have Jason Hunt, who is a 2001 liberal arts graduate who majored in history here at Penn State. He is originally from Los Angeles, California. Jason is a seasoned higher education professional with 20 years of industry experience across an array of auxiliary and functional areas within student affairs, including housing and residence life, student conduct, and leadership. Presently, Jason is a management consultant in the health and public sector practice at Accenture in New York City, specializing in higher education and change management. Jason's role includes supporting business development initiatives across the practice and supporting clients across a variety of professional industries in their journey through organizational change. In addition to his degree in history, Jason holds a master's in higher education degree in college student affairs, leadership and administration from Penn State, and an MBA in strategy and leadership from Rutgers Business School. Jason Lee is currently pursuing certification in project management and is an active member in the Liberal Arts Alumni Mentor Program and resides in Springfield, New Jersey. Thank you, Jason, for being here with us today. And Paige Armenta is a 2015 Liberal Arts graduate in economics, and she is finance and strategy manager at Netflix based in Los Angeles. In her role, Paige is responsible for supporting the UCAN-based Marcoms organization, which includes both the marketing and public relations functions. Prior to Netflix, Paige has worked in various finance roles at Nike, corporate financial planning and analysis, global business planning, Nike DCTC, Citibank, corporate financial planning and analysis, and PwC as transfer pricing consulting. Paige graduated from Liberal Arts College at Penn State in 2015 with a degree in economics and a minor in psychology, and she enjoys connecting with Penn State students and alumni. Thank you for being here, Paige, as well. So to get started, again, Lauren's going to be monitoring the Q&A. Please ask questions of our amazing alums that are here today. But just to get started, maybe we could start with you, Rebecca. Could you just start by talking a bit about how you decided on your career journey and where you are today on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for inviting us to be here. Jason, I'm not surprised you're wearing your Penn State swag sweater. We saw each other up at Penn State not too long ago. So I feel like it's important that whenever I talk about my journey, I need to tell people I didn't even know what commercial real estate was when I was at Penn State. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't think about it. When I was at Penn State doing my degree, particularly as I got closer to graduating, I was in the honors economics program and I became fascinated with microfinance. I thought I wanted to do international development. I moved to DC basically at the exact end of the GFC when there were not as many opportunities out there, and went into something that was a bit adjacent to microfinance that was more US focused. I thought, I'm just going to get into this world, go into international development, and that's going to be my thing. And very quickly, I found out that there were just things that I wasn't fully satisfied with that particular route. And specifically, if you couldn't tell with my role, it's very quantitative, and I knew I wanted to explore that more. And so that was when I started to think about other opportunities and decided to move into the Congressional Budget Office, where in a research role, whether it's at CBO or other federal agencies, the Federal Reserve, state government agencies, you tend to get a lot of experience and responsibility early on, and you get to learn a lot as a result. So I did that for several years. And when I left CBO, in late 2013, I thought I want to try something different. I wanted to move into the private sector. I had a moment that was a total fail. I took a job in consulting, and there were some things I liked about it. And there were some things that I really didn't like. And I actually still to this day can't tell you exactly what they were, but it made me open to opportunities as they came my way. And sure enough, in the fall of basically 6 months after taking that role, I decided to leave for an opportunity to join a firm in the commercial real estate industry. And even at this point, I didn't even know really what commercial real estate was. So I interviewed and I said, hey, I've got some experience with residential. Fannie and Freddie largely are active in the residential mortgage markets. And I said, I think I can learn CRE pretty quickly, but I don't know what it is. I really don't even know what you do, but am a quick learner, I'm eager, and I get economics and these other things that you think is important for this role. And sure enough, despite that brutal honesty, I was given an opportunity to sort of be the #1 right-hand person for the chief economist of this particular commercial real estate firm. And I say this particular because 1 year after joining the firm called Cassidy Turley, we went through a merger. We became a global firm, and that firm's name was DTZ. And 9 months later, we merged with Cushman and Wakefield, and we became the 3rd largest global commercial real estate firm in the world. So I went from a mid-sized US commercial real estate firm, not even knowing what I was doing, not even knowing what the industry was about, not knowing where that firm was on its life journey, to within 2 years being at the 3rd largest global real estate firm in the world. And then just a few years later, we went public. The market has moved around a lot. So my role evolved naturally just as I grew in what I do, as I got my master's and more education, but it also grew as the firm went through a journey. And I think that's an important kind of parallel and independent element of how my particular career has evolved.
Thank you so much. Evolve and change, right? Being able to deal with those things along the way. Jason or Paige, would you like to go? Talking about a bit about where you got to where you are today and on your career journey.
Yeah, I can jump in. I'll be a little bit just shorter in my answer because it's been interesting. I think for me, similarly to you, Rebecca, I wasn't really sure about kind of like the industry that I ultimately have ended up in right now. I started out in a really sort of niche area in transfer pricing, which is ultimately tax consulting. And at that point, upon graduation, I wasn't really sure if that was something that I wanted to do forever. So I think, my biggest learning has been sort of like segmenting, the different roles that I've had and sort of spinning those into kind of like the key skill sets that I want to sort of build out. So starting in consulting, got really, good at building relationships and sort of some of those soft skills. To me, it was then important to build out my technical kind of financial acumen. So I took a role in corporate finance at Citibank and kind of just building on those core capabilities and kind of foundational skills to the point where I ended up pivoting into industries that, kind of aligned with my personal interests. First, the retail industry, working at Nike, translating those skills that I learned, during my time at PwC and Citibank to those roles, and then ultimately ending up at Netflix now. But I think, the biggest takeaway from my career journey is that it hasn't necessarily been linear, right? Where I've kind of ended up in, very similar industries. I've been kind of all over the place. But I think, being able to be flexible and sort of patient in that journey has kind of allowed for me to end up in a place where, I'm really interested in it personally, and I'm also using some of those skills that I learned during my time at Penn State, as well as in my earlier portion of my career so far.
Amazing. I love it. Transferable skills, building relationships, and enjoying what you're doing, and not having a direct career path. But Jason, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I'm going to preface this by saying, if you had asked me 23 years ago if I'd be sitting here with an MBA working as a consultant, I would have laughed at you because that was not the plan. I should be wearing a tweed jacket teaching AP Social Studies in a high school somewhere. That was the plan. So I'm also going to kick off my journey by saying do not underestimate the importance of networks and mentors and leaving all of your doors open. I like to think that my education and my smarts got me to this point, but I also think that there was a little bit of luck that was involved in terms of how I landed where I landed. So my career started off right after when I graduated from Penn State. I had my first job at a small Catholic school in upstate New York, just to try out the field of student affairs to see if I liked it. Penn State offered me a position 6 months later, and of course, who doesn't want to go back to Penn State? And so I really started my career in higher education at Penn State and worked there for 6 years, did my master's degree in higher education, and then pivoted to my first mid-level position at Columbia University, where I was for 4 years. And I loved higher education. And I loved specifically working in student affairs, and felt like my history English degree, my liberal arts background, really just kind of gave me an outlook and an approach to things in an industry that tends to just kind of go along with the flow. And well, everybody's doing it this way, and we've done it this way for 30 years, so we're just going to keep doing it this way. And that's just not how I think. And so I continued to move up, and had my last position at Rutgers, which was a director level position in housing and residence life. And at that time, I started kind of kicking around the idea of, I never thought I would leave student affairs after 20 years. I thought that that would be it. And that was, I was going to maybe move on to one or two more institutions, but decided that I needed another degree to move up in the field and had no interest in doing a PhD. And so the MBA was attractive because it was a way to complement the master's degree that I already had, but would definitely give me skills. So in finance, and other areas that I didn't have experience or direct knowledge in. And then halfway through my MBA program, it was like a part of my brain had been dormant for 20 years. And all these things that I was feeling and things that I wanted to do just kind of came to fruition. And I began to consider a career pivot, and just realized that my heart wasn't in traditional higher education industry any longer. Sad to say that after a 20-year career, but it just wasn't there anymore. And it was time to pivot. And I started looking at consulting. We have quite a few firms in the country that specialize in higher education consulting. And so for me, the pivot had to make sense. That's where my expertise is. And so long story short, luck would have it, I had a colleague in the field who left, works at the firm that I worked at now. She reached out to me 3 months before graduation, had a great interview. 4 months later, Accenture brought me on as a consultant. I'm now in my third year on my third project. On my first higher education project, my first project was actually in the transportation sector here in New York. So don't underestimate the transferability of your skills. It's actually funny to me in consulting how you can actually pivot from project to project. And being a change management consultant, it's really about the people and processes you kind of learn as you go and as you work through a project. So don't close those doors, leave those doors open. Don't walk away from opportunities. Be receptive to experiences that might feel out of your wheelhouse. I definitely don't think that I would have landed where I'm at in my career journey if I hadn't walked through a lot of those doors that were opened.
Awesome. Okay, the session's over. No, I'm kidding. All three of you, just wonderful feedback. Jason just talking about the support network and mentors that have helped you along the way, and pivoting, after 20 years in one industry and moving into another. All great advice. Lauren, do we have a question?
We do. So in the chat, we have a question. It says, what knowledge is necessary to be a consultant in a global position? So I feel like each of you probably can have a take on this. So why don't we just start with Rebecca? We'll go Rebecca, Paige, and then Jason again.
I think I probably only have limits. So I worked at a very niche consulting firm that was 60 people in size, very focused on supporting the US federal government and specific ways that they analyze credit. So from a consulting firm perspective, I think my experience there is more limited, but I am in a global firm, I am in a global role. And what I can say is, you should think, especially as you consider consulting firm or global company, what is it that you want to be doing? Because that's a very general question, right? Like, do you want to be on the business side? Do you want to be in marketing? Do you want to explore different things and maybe go into a rotational program? And what companies offer that kind of access to different verticals within their company? Because, you're going to do the subject matter every single day, day in and day out. And like me, you'll learn along the journey, like, oh, I didn't like that. That's not where I want to be. And it's not that that's a mistake. It's that you learn about yourself as you go in this journey called life. And so I think, um, at firms, when they hire new talent, they understand you're going to come in with some skills, but they really want you to be somebody they can teach, somebody that they can grow and invest in. And so I don't think there's anything specific other than figuring out, well, what kind of consulting do I want to do? Is it going to be transfer price, consulting? Is it going to be something else? And I think maybe even like Jason's career, you may find that that's something later in your career after you've built up subject matter expertise by going through these other stages, working at different kinds of companies or organizations, maybe in the public sector, maybe in the not-for-profit sector, and so on. So I think echo what Jason said, which is be open, be very open to all the doors that you find and leave them open. And I didn't emphasize it in my opening remarks, but I would definitely echo the comments around mentors and networking. I got a call to interview in commercial real estate because an economist I had met who was not in my division, who I went out of my way to socialize with because I'm just a social person, he called me and said, my wife is a land broker. She works at a company that needs this. It wasn't because I knew about the company or the role or anything else. And that came back as just a sort of moment of luck in my career. So I really think use the colleagues around you as, be a sponge, soak up their knowledge, make those connections, make genuine connections where you're not, per se asking, oh, do you have a job opening or so on? Like really make a genuine connection with somebody, learn from them collectively. Your colleagues have hundreds of years of experience. They've got things to teach you, and be open to those things. And you never know what lies down the line. So I did want to revisit that because I didn't emphasize that in my remarks, but I think that's important.
Rebecca, before we move on, there's just a follow-up question. Thank you so much. Can you elaborate on what you mean by verticals?
Yeah, so within a company like Cushman & Wakefield, we're commercial real estate, but like, what does that even mean, right? We have brokerage, so we represent buyers and sellers in transactions in the capital markets. We represent tenants and landlords in the leasing markets in a brokerage vertical. We also do valuations and appraisals. That's an independent business that's run under the umbrella of Cushman & Wakefield. So verticals are almost like business offerings and mini businesses within a broader company or organization, such as Cushman & Wakefield. So you'll often hear that sort of nomenclature when you get into businesses that have multiple offerings.
Thank you, Rebecca. So just to repeat the question for Paige and Jason, so the knowledge that's necessary to be a consultant in a global position.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think Rebecca kind of hit on it, right? Like there is a lot of technical kind of knowledge that goes into being a global consultant, and that will sort of depend on what kind of role you're doing. I think from more of just like a general perspective, it's really important to have a curious mindset when you're in a consulting role. When I was in sort of a proper consulting role at PwC, we worked with a lot of different clients, pharmaceuticals, technology, consumer products. So kind of like a variety of different areas. So it wasn't necessarily a subject matter expert in anything, but to kind of learn into the different client spaces, you have to ask a lot of questions. You have to be open-minded and really sort of drive kind of like your own learning and education as you're sort of entering and kind of identifying what areas really do align with your sort of long-term interests, where you could become like a subject matter expert. So yeah, I think I would just kind of highlight that as being one of the core competencies when you do sort of start out in consulting following graduation.
Yeah, and I think to build off of both Rebecca and Paige's excellent points, I think in the consulting field, I'm a little bit of a unicorn. I don't know if that's the right analogy because a lot of people in my firm, their first job was at Accenture and they haven't left. I'm considered a subject matter expert because of my industry experience in higher education. And so to give you an example of that and how I leverage that, I'm on a ECRM, which is Enterprise Constituent Relationship Management. Essentially, it's a technological platform implementation. But I am the change lead. So even though I'm new to this platform, I know what it does. I don't necessarily understand how it functions. I know at the end of the day, I have to train 300 plus people on how to use it. So we will figure it out because that's what we do in consulting. So to build off of Rebecca and Paige's points, I think you really have to come in with an open mind. Consulting is not what I thought it was. I thought we would be sitting at the table, talking to the client, strategizing. That's not what consulting is by any stretch of the imagination. To a degree, yes. But you really, I think consulting is great for folks who are solution-oriented and problem solvers, and more importantly, are self-starters. I think those are key skills because every project is different. My first project, I was leading a team of 10 people. My change team is me and an analyst on this current project who I'm losing in 5 weeks. So you really have to be able to pivot and really think on your feet and learn pretty quickly. The way my subject matter or my SME experience comes in, I'm working with a bunch of tech folks who are great, but they don't understand higher education. So I'm in that space to provide the perspective. This is what admissions does. This is what financial aid does, et cetera. So I give them that perspective so that they can keep that in the back of their mind while they're building out this platform. So to Paige's point, at an entry level, and most consultants, when you go into a consulting firm at the entry level, usually it's at the analyst level. That's where the learning happens, and that's where you eventually build those skills to eventually become more of a SME, but it takes time to get there, as Rebecca had mentioned earlier. So any company that has like an apprenticeship program where you can actually work on an actual consulting project in an analyst capacity, that's where you start building those skills. But it's really just having an open mind and really being able to learn because everyone has a level and layer of expertise, but every project in consulting and every team and every client is different. And so you never know what you need to pull from your proverbial toolbox until you're in the thick of the project. So don't underestimate your skills. It's just a matter of figuring out how to use and leverage them once you're on a project.
Fantastic. Thank you. Oh, wonderful advice so far. So keep putting questions in the Q&A. We want your questions to come through. I'm going to go with one here. What was your most valuable resource at Penn State, or a valuable resource that you found? And do you have any suggestions for involvement for students here at Penn State to help them in a global type of career? Rebecca?
I
Okay.
can keep with the tradition of going first. I don't mind. So I think the first resource, and it might sound a little obvious, is the university itself. I mean, just think about the staff that are there, the professors, the incredible research that they do, all of the graduate students that are there doing their own research as they pursue their PhDs or masters. My experience was people in life, this has been an observation I've made. People like to talk about themselves. So if you have questions and you want to learn, what does somebody in, this particular field do? What was their career like? Reach out to them. I mean, the worst that they're going to do is say, no, I don't have time, right? Or maybe they don't respond. Maybe that happens. So I would say don't be shy, reach out to people, go to office hours, talk to people and get to know, because that again, it establishes some skill set around what will eventually feed into the way that you network. You'll develop a level of comfort, you'll develop a bank of questions and things that really facilitate conversation. So I would definitely not be shy by any means in reaching out to the incredible staff that the university has. I would also say, you know, there are a lot of programs just that I got involved with, things like supplemental instruction, right? All just in order to perform academically. If that's something that's important to you, Penn State has, you know, all kinds of resources that they offer. And that was important to me. So I leveraged those. I became a supplemental instructor. It was then teaching experience that I thought, if I ever want to go into academia, I will have this as a signal that that is something that I've forayed into in my past. And then, you know, also the social clubs, the other kinds of clubs that are specific to interests that you have or sports that you're interested in, getting involved in those organizations. You know, when you come out into the world and you're trying to market yourself through your resume for a role, having leadership or participation in these organizations sends a signal to future employers, and it gives you nuggets on your resume to say, hey, I took a leadership role in this organization, and you know, these are the kinds of things that I did in that role. And that all sends signals, you know, that all tells an organization that you're a self-starter, right? That you're engaged, that you have certain maybe skill sets that fall into that leadership role that you had, or simply that you're somebody who doesn't sit back and right just kind of coast through, right? You have things on your resume that show you were participating in the broader institution of Penn State, or working part-time, you know, to help put yourself through school, all of those kinds of things. I worked crazy odd jobs. Like my best friend's mom had a catering company, and I would cater weddings in the summer. I played piano at some weddings. I mean, I did like crazy stuff that just all came together, and it just worked for me. So I would say Penn State has amazing resources. You should definitely use them. Jason, I'll pass it to you.
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. Everything that Rebecca said is true. Just to kind of give all of you a little bit of context, I know that we're all glued to our phones and our tablets and our, you know, laptops, but you know, in the mid-90s, you had to talk to people. None of those things existed. I mean, we were still scheduling classes on the phone via the Blue Book. So I can't reiterate Rebecca's point about talking to people and putting yourself out there. How I landed my first job in higher education, I was 20 years old, hadn't graduated yet, had very little professional experience, and literally asked my hall director, which is a person that runs a residence hall at Penn State, how do I do what you do? And she said, you need a master's degree. I said, well, I'm not doing that, but how do I do what you do? And she said, well, you need to go out and get experience. And so I literally applied to 30, 40 plus colleges and universities before this small private Catholic school that I had never heard of offered me an interview, and then ultimately offered me a job. So, you know, that would not have happened had I not put myself out there. I knew that I was young. I knew I had no experience. I hadn't even graduated from Penn State yet. So, you know, the importance of putting yourself out there, asking questions, get off your phones, get off of the apps, and talk to people. All of you have so many valuable resources that we didn't have back then. And we had great resources. Penn State has a plethora of resources, but because of technology and how things have advanced, all of you have access to so many resources that it's probably a little overwhelming because there is so much out there. But take advantage of those resources, talk to people, network, and ask questions. That's how doors open for you. And the other thing too is it's okay to start small. I feel like a lot of students feel like they have to graduate and hit the big leagues. That's not quite how it works. You know, you have to be willing, you know, to start probably on a smaller scale, not with the pay that you're expecting, not at the company you were hoping to be at, but that's how doors open for you. That's how you gain experience. That's how you figure out what you like and what you don't like. My first job in 2001 paid me $14,500 a year. That was $489.52 in 2001. Just putting that out there. And I was 21 years old. So that was also 23 years ago. So I say all that to you to say, talk to people, don't shy away from experiences, and put yourself out there. And I will pass it to Paige.
Yeah, I mean, I think +1 to everything. Again, probably reiterating some of what you both have already hit on, but for me, the kind of alumni network was really massive in terms of a resource for me, especially when I was kind of exploring what it was I wanted to do, potential opportunities. And I think kind of like the beauty of the liberal arts college is that the alumni coming out of there, right, they do a wide range of things, whether, it's something like Rebecca, something like Jason. There's a lot of careers that kind of get spun out of the liberal arts college. So I really spoke to a lot of alumni coming from, my position and sort of understanding what the opportunities were. And like I said, the Penn State alumni network is massive. So I think I also kind of ran into different connections unknowingly that they were Penn State graduates, and basically just kind of through all of that genuine connection and conversation was able to really sort of identify opportunities out of college, and sort of secure those. So yeah, I think the alumni piece was the biggest part for me that was most useful.
Awesome. Okay, we have some questions in the Q&A and they are awesome. So we'll go there next. And you don't have to all go through. If you feel like one of you answers it, we can move on to the next one. There's actually 4 in here and we have 20 more minutes. So what was it like pivoting to different careers as you discovered what you wanted to do? How did you open those doors? What was the job search and interviewing process like?
I can answer this one because I've had an interesting journey. I think pivoting to different careers, I sort of hit on this in my opening remarks, but it's really sort of important to understand what the transferable skills are in your current role and how you can kind of like parlay those into, a role that you're going after that might be in a different industry or different sort of space. So, for example, when I wanted to get into Nike, I looked at everything that I had done at PwC, whether that was working with different types of clients or at Citibank, kind of really building out that corporate FP&A experience and kind of married that with my passion for, I guess, retail or, Nike as a company. So really kind of highlighted how what I had done to date would apply to the roles that I was looking at Nike. And I think that sort of really helped me and really kind of like highlighting just the passion for something that you're going after, whether it's from a professional or a personal perspective. I felt like that really opened up doors for me throughout the interview process because the hiring manager saw that I was coachable, I was curious, I had an interest in the space, even if I wasn't coming from that space directly. So that's kind of how I've treated this journey so far.
Jason, I know that you've had a pretty big career switch, so would you mind just commenting on that a little bit as well?
Sure. Yeah, it wasn't in the cards. It wasn't planned at all. And I think for me, I just started doing research. I think I was lucky in the sense that I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. In my mind, if I was going to go into consulting, it had to be higher education adjacent. It didn't really make sense for me to explore any other option. But now that I'm in consulting, I can now see how if I want to pivot, in other areas, I can, because I do now have that experience in consulting. But similar to what Paige was talking about, for me, because of my years of experience, I really just leveraged my knowledge. I've worked at Ivy League institutions, Big Ten institutions, religious affiliated institutions, and so across a lot of different functions. And so I really do understand the higher education landscape. And I know and I see in my projects now that, we just have a lot of folks that just don't have that expertise. And so for me, that was a really huge leverage for me. And my colleague that did an internal referral for me, that's why she reached out to me. She's like, we need more subject matter experts in higher education that understand the industry on a multitude of levels. And so it just made sense. So I think my biggest skill contribution has been just my knowledge of the industry. Also the fact that I've been managing people for 20 years. And I think when you work in consulting, everything you do is in teams and everything is people related. And so I think that's also the biggest skill. Now I know why in business school they make you do every single project, including papers, which is for a history English major, doing a group paper is like our worst nightmare. But now I understand in business school why everything is done in teams, because as a consultant, all of your project work is in a team and you need to be able to pivot and work with different personalities. And that's something as a manager I've learned and hopefully have mastered in my 20 years. And so I think that for me, those two things were great. I knew that everything else from a consulting perspective, I would be able to learn, but I knew that I had strong people skills, managerial skills, and subject matter knowledge of the field and the industry that I was going to be working in.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That is awesome. Rebecca, we're going to go to you the next question. When you were looking for entry-level positions coming out of college, what was one thing you did during the job search or interview process to make you stand out as a candidate?
Well, I'll comment on that, and then I'll say something that I think stands out about candidates we consider. We hire a lot of individuals in our vertical at Cushman and Wakefield, which I'll highlight a few things that stand out to me and other hiring managers. I think it's important context that I graduated at a time when the unemployment rate was 10%. I was competing with seasoned individuals, people who had experience who were laid off during the financial crisis. And so I can say being open to different opportunities, having scope and casting a wide net is something I always encourage not just my mentors, but even my friends to do when they're thinking about potential new opportunities, because you really don't know a role and the organization until you start to get to ask questions in an interviewing process. And so I cast a really wide net. Frankly, I don't remember applying to the Congressional Budget Office. I applied to literally hundreds and hundreds of places. And I look back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I don't remember applying to that. That's kind of crazy, because then I ended up working there. You know, I think it's important to get resume feedback, because you only have a few moments, a quick scan of your resume that hopefully a person is going to do, if not an algorithm. And so you want keywords, you want key skills, and that's a little bit of an art. You know, it's a little bit, it takes practice. Penn State has resources for resume review and so on. So I think use those. I did something very subtle, honestly, where I actually made underneath my name, like my address and my contact information, a different color that was aligned with the color of a small business that I started on the side. And it was like lime green. It kind of stood out. It was just a little bit different. Maybe that caught an eye, maybe it didn't. I wouldn't say go crazy with overly styling and so on your resume, but subtle things can sometimes make a difference. Something that stands out to me for candidates that we interview, right? It's important to show you want to grow, you have drive, you know, that you want to be in an organization. Nothing is more off-putting than feeling like you're hiring somebody who already wants to move on to the next job, or who's making it obvious that this role is just a stepping stone to something better. Entry-level roles are entry-level roles. Companies know that, organizations know that. I love when a candidate says, what do I need to do to be successful in this role? What are the skill sets that are going to help me add value to you when I'm in this role? And what are the goals that you have for what this role contributes to the team or the department or so on? Be very focused on what you're interviewing for and what that role is expected to do to contribute. Because even if you don't have experience, inevitably you have skills that can map into the things that they need that role to do. And separately, you can ask, well, what's career growth at the firm like? What's all of this other stuff? But if I feel like I'm talking to somebody who already wants to move on, that is very, very off-putting. And so I always encourage my mentees and other college students that I talk to, really focus on the role you're actually interviewing for and focus on how can I add value, right? How can I add value through this role to your department, to your group, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome, thank you. Before we move on to the next one, Jason or Paige, would you like to add anything to that?
I think Rebecca hit them all, so I have nothing to add.
Yeah, no, agreed from my end.
All right, let's move on to the next one. How did you, let's see, navigate finding your first job out of the university? Some of these companies like Netflix seem very intimidating to try to work at, and it can sway people away from applying or reaching out. Paige, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think for me personally, there are companies that, recruit out of universities, so like Big Four firms, et cetera. So for me, I kind of identified those just to sort of get the momentum going and kind of, get comfortable interviewing. But I do think, all that being said, like Rebecca had hit on, companies have entry-level roles. So I wouldn't necessarily be intimidated, even if, the company you're thinking about feels intimidating. They have those roles for a reason. They're trying to recruit students, freshly graduated students. So I would encourage everybody to kind of go after them. But if you do personally feel intimidated, there are certain companies that have like rotational programs or kind of like associate classes that are still really big companies as well. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Jason, Rebecca, would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, I think Paige made some excellent points, and Dana, please correct me if I'm off track from the question a little bit, but I think to expand and to build off of Paige's points, I think a lot of reasons why companies come off as intimidating to a lot of students is because you're not digging deep enough. You're looking at the name, you're looking at the salary, you're looking at the location. Those are important things. What about the company's mission? What about their values? Those things that you can find on any company website, regardless of whether it's PwC, whether it's Cushman and Wakefield, whether it's Accenture, whatever. Every company and organization has a mission, or they have a vision, or they have their values somewhere in there. Some you have to dig for a little more than others, but I think that's why a lot of companies tend to be intimidating towards a lot of students, because you're only looking at one side of the company. And I think if you can really dig deep, and it takes time to do research, we get it. You're applying for a lot of jobs at the same time. And it needs to be a relatively structured process. But if something isn't resonating with you beyond the things that you're looking at, dig deeper. Social media is also great for doing research. See what their presence is on Instagram, what their presence is on LinkedIn. All of these apps that all of you are already tapped into, leverage those to expand your knowledge and truly be able to make an informed decision. This is, oh yeah, I was intimidated by this company, but their values really align with me and their mission really speaks to me. And I think that will help kind of curb some of that initial intimidation. You have to look beyond the wants of a job and focus on what you need, because it does both. There's certain things we want from a job, but there are also things that we need from a job too as well. So if you're feeling intimidated or you feel like something's not resonating, you're not digging deep enough. And you do that deep dive and it still isn't resonating, then you move on. That might not be the company for you.
Awesome, thank you.
I would just add really quickly, like to Jason's point, big companies, I'm at a big company, they're just the sum of a bunch of small parts. So what's the smaller part that you're applying to? And maybe it's even a smaller part of the big part. So think about it that way, because companies are big, but they're really just a sum of all the parts.
That's a great point as well. Thank you, Rebecca. So the next question, what
Real
was...
quick, Dana, I'm
Oh,
so
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. I think Paige came off mute. Did you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
I was gonna say I do have one more point, but it'll be quick. I do think too, right? Like you're also never gonna get a job that you don't apply for. So there's always value in kind of like throwing your name in the hat. That's what I've done a couple of times. And then once you get your foot in the door with the interview, you really show up, showcase yourself like us Penn Staters do. But you really kind of have to take that jump, right? And kind of, even if it is intimidating, right? Put your name in the hat and then go from there. But you won't really get that experience if you don't go after every kind of opportunity that piques your interest.
Love it. That is great, great advice, Paige. Thank you. So what do you believe the role that graduate school played in your career? Looking back, do you believe it was a valuable investment to your career or not as necessary as you thought?
I'll go quick because I think I can be the briefest here. I got a master's degree in applied economics from Johns Hopkins. I've done other continuing education in technical subjects since then. For the nature of my role, it was absolutely 100% necessary. There's a certain amount of technical acumen and expertise that I need to have. What it didn't teach me are more of the soft skills, the management, the actual thing that experience starts to get you. So, you know, if you're very focused on something like accounting or, you know, computer science or economics, you know, these sometimes they're just a necessary part of the journey over time. They don't need to be happening right away. I did a few years, I worked full-time, I did my master's part-time. I found by working, being able to apply in real time what I was learning was an incredibly valuable way for me to go about getting my master's degree. But I'm a little bit of a highly specific case, I think, in this particular instance.
I'm gonna dive in because Rebecca hit a couple of points. Same for me. I did both my master's degrees while working full time. And to Rebecca's point, that's just how I learn. I love being able to learn in the classroom during the day and then be able to apply what I learned immediately to my job that I was doing. Penn State paid for my master's degree and Rutgers paid for my business degree. So I say that to you to say I probably would not. I needed the student affairs degree because in higher education and student affairs, it's a very niche field. And so you do need a master's degree in higher education to work in student affairs or higher education. You can't move up in the field unless you have that experience. I didn't need the MBA to pivot into consulting. I'm actually surprised how many consultants don't have MBAs. And again, stepping into the MBA program for me, the initial goal wasn't to transition into consulting. It was to move up in higher education. I'm on a project with 30 people. I'm the only one that has an MBA. So it just goes to show you don't necessarily need it for certain industries. That's where you kind of have to do your homework a little bit. I always tell students, if you're thinking about an MBA, go to a company that's going to either pay for a part of it, all of it, you know, do your homework because MBAs are not cheap degrees. So I think it's really going to be based off of where you want to pivot into or what area you want to step into. And I think to Rebecca's point, if you're stepping into something that's niche, that really requires you to have that master's degree, then, you know, it's probably worth it to do it. But again, for me, I probably wouldn't have, you know, pursued a $90,000 business degree if I had to pay for it. So those are things that you kind of have to consider.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to do one more question from the Q&A, and because we're getting close to the end of time here, and I want to hear from each panelist with one more piece of advice. But the last question here is, how do you dictate when it's time to move on to a new opportunity from a current role?
I'll go first. I think I can maybe even attempt to answer both questions in the queue at the same time. We'll see how successful I am. For me, I knew when it was time because I'm relentlessly curious. When I felt like I was not growing anymore, when I was not learning on a day-to-day basis, when I wasn't being challenged and doing things that I actually didn't know how to do before, or developing skills that I hadn't developed before. You know, it's like training your muscles. You've got to really do it for them to get better and stronger. Then I knew it was time. And I've done all of this for the most part of my career in the same organization, growing in the same organization. Companies want to keep you. They spend a lot of money recruiting you. Retention is one of the number one issues that the companies I work with, which include all the big names and many, many small companies all over the world, they want to recruit talent and retain it. And if you have legitimate conversations with your management as you succeed in your current role, you say, you know, I want to grow more. What are other opportunities for me, both within maybe the part of the organization I'm in now, maybe that involves transferring to a different part of the organization and learning new things you hadn't done before. But I think, you know, that's going to be up to each person. And do you really feel like you're still growing? Do you feel like you've mastered what you're doing? And do you want to do more than just master one thing? Do you want to continue to push yourself in and try new things? It's always a little bit uncomfortable, and that's not for everybody. There are some people who like being in a comfort zone and doing the same thing or having that stability, and that's fine. But if you want to grow and you want to develop new skills, I think you just have to be willing to put yourself out there and talk both within an organization or pivot, work for a new company, apply to new jobs, but be very open-minded to the fact that organizations want to keep talent in-house. And if you talk to your management and you talk to HR, you may be surprised about the kinds of things that they can do to allow you to have a career in that same company and flourish and continue to grow.
Thank you. Any, Jason, would you like to
Sorry,
add?
David.
Okay.
I'll dive in. So for me, my heart just wasn't in it anymore. I love higher education. I loved working with college students. I loved my job. I'm really happy to say over a 20-year period, everything I wanted to accomplish in my career as a higher education professional, I did. But you know, I reached the director level and I still felt like I just couldn't get things done. And I just got tired. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And the sad reality about a lot of our brilliant higher education professionals, a lot of us we love students and we love working in that environment. We can't see ourselves doing anything else. And so it's hard for us to think about, how do I pivot out, or how do I take all these skills, you know, and apply them somewhere else? And so, you know, I would say, contrary to Rebecca's points that she made, which were great points, when you feel like a part of you has died inside, there's no other way to put it. I know that sounds morbid, but when your heart's not in it and you see people whose hearts are not in it and you don't want to become that person, it's time to go.
That is why I left consulting too. I had that exact same feeling and I just knew. And you should trust your instincts.
I love it. Thank you. Paige, do you have one piece of advice that you'd like to leave our students here with today?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I remember being kind of in the position, you know, trying to land a job, and I was incredibly stressed out. So I think it's just kind of like, my words of wisdom would be just that, you know, everything will work out, as cheesy as that does sound. I think you just kind of have to stay focused on sort of like, what's the longer term plan? Even if, you know, you're exploring opportunities that might not be what you want to do forever, you can, again, always sort of parlay that into something down the line. So yeah, I think it's just kind of like, enjoy that journey and be open to different opportunities as you explore sort of your next steps out of Penn State.
Jason and Rebecca, I know we're gonna do a 30-second quick. We have to hear your advice as well.
I'll go. I would build on that and say, just relax. Like, it'll work out. You know, you're gonna hit stumbling blocks. You're gonna get no's. You're gonna get no responses on some applications. It's fine. You know, it's fine. you'll end up where you need to be at some point in your life. And I found myself there years after I thought I would be there. So I think just relax, take it in stride, enjoy life along the way, and trust that things will eventually, like Paige said, work out. And if you don't know what that longer term plan is, like, also don't worry. I had no idea what was going to happen. Like, I graduated in a tough time, and I was very stressed out. And I look back and I think, man, I wish I just like relaxed, you know. I wish I relaxed and enjoyed being like 21, 22 years old, and I wasn't so stressed out about it.
And I think I'll add to Paige and Rebecca's excellent points. And Rebecca kind of alluded to this. Enjoy the ride. I'm 45, soon to be 46, and it's been a fantastic ride. I didn't. You hop on the caboose, you don't know where it's taking you. I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. Let's just see where it goes and where we land. And sometimes I kind of have to pinch myself because I genuinely love what I do. Even though I left an industry that was very stressful, I did love it. And I'm very fortunate enough to have pivoted into an industry that I love, that I'm still figuring out and learning. This is year 3. I know a lot, but there's also still a lot that I have to learn. So don't ever stop learning. I think that's the other piece of advice too. But enjoy the ride. Again, to Paige and Rebecca's points, don't take it so seriously. You're going to get no's. It's not personal. Remember, we have algorithms now that are sorting you out. It's not a human being that's actually telling you no. It's probably an AI chatbot telling you no. So don't take it seriously. Enjoy the ride and have fun. That's, what your youth is for. And to Rebecca's great point, you will end up and you will land where you are supposed to be. It might be at 25. It might be at 60. You don't know. But enjoy it and don't take anything for granted.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so thankful for these amazing Penn Staters that joined us today. We probably could have talked to each of you for an hour each. So thanks for sharing all your wealth in this short amount of time. We are also so thankful that we were able to record this session, and it'll go on our YouTube page for the Career Enrichment Network. We have our programming for the last several years there, and just continues to be a resource. So please check that out, students. Also, our Career Enrichment Network, Lauren and I are both career coaches. We have one-on-one appointments. We have 2 other career coaches in our office. And as these amazing alums said, take advantage of the resources here. Please take advantage of us. We'd love to see you in here, and you can schedule through Nittany Lion Career. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Paige. And thank you, Rebecca.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You all are rock stars. I loved hearing from you. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, students, for attending.
Have a great day.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.